Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to Overwatch Central. So most of you know by now that I've been doing this ranked journal for quite some time, going over some tips that I've learned as I've climbed from Plat 2 all the way to Master. Now, as much as I'd like to give advice to everybody on how to improve, there's a big spectrum of players, right? All the way going from bronze people that watch us, all the way to some GMs, top 500s that may sort of pop in now and again. But I wanted to go over common mistakes that everybody ends up doing. But I felt that this was worth getting a experienced person in analysing people's games, so I brought in Iostux. He's a friend of mine that's also a private coach for a lot of players. So I figured we'd get together and discuss some of the main reasons why you may keep losing games and how to bear that in mind and use that to your advantage. The footage you are seeing on screen is one of Iostux's coachees, so a big shout out to this person for letting us use his footage. And because we're all here to learn how to improve, if you do see anything that you think Severin could be doing better in his gameplay, then do put it in the comments below, but just don't be an ass about it, okay? But without further ado, let's get started. So I figured I'd get a little bit of help with this video. I've brought in a friend of mine, Iostux. If you just want to give a brief introduction to yourself, because you've probably watched more Overwatch than I have, especially clips of other people as well, because you are like a VOD coach, I guess.
Sure, my name is Iostux. I am a private coach and I coach over 70 individuals and currently 2 teams on how they can get better at Overwatch.
Yeah, and I thought this was a really interesting sort of discussion to have because, as I sort of said at the start of this video, we have a lot of people that watch us ranging from silver all the way up to a couple of masters and GM players. And everybody wants to improve, everybody wants to be better at the game, so it's very difficult to give mechanical advice and specific hero advice. So I thought I'd sort of pull you along and talk about some main reasons why people may keep losing across from silver to GM or whatever. And I guess the first one has a lot to do with VOD reviews especially, and that's not being able to evaluate yourself and what you're actually doing, right?
Yes, definitely. So one of the issues that I see with players is that they always associate losses with bad play and wins with really good plays. However, a loss and a victory is always the result of how your team played compared to the other team. It's not an indicator of your performance. You may win a game even though you made lots of mistakes, just because your teammates managed to outweigh that. But this is a trap. You attach the gameplay decisions of that game with winning, and you start building bad habits. Or you may play really well, but you end up losing, thinking to yourself that you did something wrong. You can make no mistakes and still lose, as Picard said.
I think this is what I've always said with VOD reviews, especially when I sent in a game to one of my friends, one amongst many, to sort of have a look at playing Reinhardt. It was a game that we won, but I was sat there thinking, I don't know how we won this because I played like crap. And they're really good games to watch, especially for yourself, because it gives you a good indication of your team playing well, but maybe you aren't, and then you could sort of see what you did wrong specifically, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. Self-reflection is always the fastest way to get better at anything you do, to be honest, and that's no different in Overwatch. So, one of the questions that I get a lot in my personal sessions is that people are always wondering, they watch their VODs, but they aren't exactly sure how they should go about it. So, how can you evaluate yourself? You need to make sure that you look at every play very objectively, not counting in whether the game was a win or a loss. Realizing what play was objectively good and which ones are just bad, independent of the game's outcome, means that you will improve a lot faster instead of having to break bad habits you got from adapting poor strategies that ended up winning you the game. So instead of just looking at what you do wrong, instead of just looking at your deaths, also look at the fights that you are winning and always ask yourself the question, maybe we could have won that fight with using one less ultimate, or we could have given the enemies less ultimate charge in the process. Maybe we could have engaged 10 seconds later and waste more of the attacking team's time. Asking yourself these questions plays a big part in getting the most out of a single VOD.
For sure, and I think that's a good place to start, being able to record some of the games that you have. I mean, we use Shadowplay, for example, which is really good at capturing the last 10-15 minutes. So if you want to certainly look and evaluate your own, and sort of practice even coaching other people as well and picking up things they may have done well or not well there. And that's another thing as well. Look back at some of the other things that you did and go, actually, I'm really good at doing this. Or in this game, I did a really good ultimate and I should try and aim to do stuff like this more often. Kind of focusing on the negatives will obviously kind of depress you, make you feel crap. So just try and focus on the positives that you do as well as the negatives. It's about finding that balance and working on the things that you are both good at, but also need work on. Another thing that I see a lot of when it comes to people maybe losing a lot of games has a lot to do with, we'll call them outside sources. MMR, win streaks, Torb mains, Sombra players, stuff like that. This whole idea that it's other people and other aspects that may be reasons why you're losing. And this is a very valid thing to go over, right? This does happen, right?
It definitely does. The important thing, however, is to note that you can't affect these things. Most players tend to focus so much on their teammates that most of their time is spent trying to fix them. And when the match is over, they probably won't see them ever again. And the chances of you fixing your teammate in 20 minutes is very slim. So use that time to not focus on aspects that are outside of your control.
Yeah, and it's a double-edged sword as well. Whatever problems that you have in your own games with toxic people not in team chat is a good example of something that happens a lot and you just can't control. A lot of the time the enemy team will have this as well, and a lot of these cases you just won't know that they're flaming at each other, that they're being toxic and arguing amongst themselves, because you can't see their team chat and you can't be in their team voice. And I think another thing that's good to go over as well with win streaks and loss streaks as well is that MMR and rank at the end of the day is a metric to give you at least what it thinks you deserve of free games. It doesn't actually represent your skill, if that makes sense. But this was an interesting point. This next one is a really interesting point that you brought up to me, and it made me think about things a little bit, as I'm much more of a reserved. I only really play Reinhardt in the high ranked games, but playing in your comfort zone.
Yes, so not testing your limits means you never truly know how far you can go. You never know what characters you may be good at. You never know how close you can get to a Roadhog without him killing you. You never know if you can outplay the enemy McCree as Tracer without trying first. If you want to win more games, it's not enough to be as good as everyone else. You need to clearly outperform them, so much so that even the MMR system sees that you clearly don't belong in that rating. You may be capable of a lot more than you think, but you never had the guts to actually test it because you're worried that testing these things out will use your rating. But losing rating and facing failures is the only way to learn from mistakes, and learning from mistakes is the only way you can get better.
I think it's definitely worth stressing that this doesn't necessarily mean picking up Genji if you've only got like 20 minutes playtime on him, whatever. And also, there are a couple of heroes that you might want to not try this on. There are really big, important heroes in a team comp, and they're especially Reinhardt, Roadhog, stuff like that.
Yeah, so by that I don't just mean that you can play Reinhardt if your team needs it, or that you can play one character of each role. It also means that you never force your teammates onto something they don't feel comfortable on. Check their career profiles. They may be shy, especially in the lower ranks. If you see someone is clearly someone who invested most of their time on Ana, it may be beneficial to play something else you are good at, and which the team needs, giving him a pick he is comfortable on. This doesn't mean you should rely on your teammates to carry you. This means that you should make it as easy as possible for your teammates to play comfortably and at their peak performance.
Now, the fourth point is a video that you've already done a video on. It was in fact one of the videos that sort of helped us sort of become friends, I suppose. And it's a lot to do with forcing, and this is something I see at master level as well. It's the desire to use ultimates and to use abilities when you just don't need to.
Yeah, so it's important that you don't take risks unless you need to play the objective. Are you already pushing the payload? Then don't try to engage until they start to contest. Don't take the first good opportunity you get. Take your time, and sometimes just waiting for the enemy Lucio to use his ultimate can make your Zarya ultimate so much stronger. You can't see anyone after using your soldier ultimate. The mistake already happened. Don't run out of cover trying to find someone to kill. Just accept the fact that your ultimate wasn't well thought out and that you need to prepare it better next time. Don't chase after a Roadhog as soldier, for example, if you have the point. The risk of you dying to him, giving the enemies an opener to retake the point, far outweighs the potential benefit of delaying the next enemy push by 5 seconds.
I think this happens a lot with wanting to synergize ults, Zarya, soldier. Sometimes, you whiff a Reinhardt ult. A very common thing to see actually there is a Reinhardt whiffing his Earth Shatter into the enemy Rein and then suddenly wanting to compensate for that by charging him or something like that. It's like, no, I need to kill him, he needs to die.
Yeah, exactly. This doesn't mean that you should, never take any opportunities. It just means that you need to wait for the enemies to make a mistake, which ensures that the play that you make doesn't pose a risk to the objective and will be even more successful than if you just force the play.
So you mentioned Soldier there using his ultimate and maybe whiffing it, and that forcing aspect, especially with Reinhardt, goes on to the next point, which is a lack of preparation, and that is using ultimates in situations where you don't really need to, or just being aware that a lot of ultimates within the game can be easily mitigated. Reinhardt ult can be beaten by the shield, a soldier ult in a D.Va can go straight into him, and it's an unfair trade-off because you're using an ability into another enemy hero's normal ability. Shield is just a right click for Reinhardt, Defense Matrix is just a right click for D.Va. They lose absolutely nothing from doing this. I think another really common example I see a lot of is the unusual use of nano boost a lot of the time. So I might be playing Reinhardt, very common thing that tends to be happening at the moment. The enemy team may have a soldier ult, I have to keep my shields to protect my team, and then I get nano boosted, and it's one of those situations where it's a situation where I can't do anything and it's a waste of a really important ability. But it's more about knowing that if you're playing soldier and you have your ult ready, that you can't just throw it into a D.Va, as she will mitigate all of that damage. Doesn't affect her, it's her right click ability, she has it a lot of the time, whereas you only get your ultimate a couple of times a game. So it's making sure that you get as much use out of those infrequent strong abilities like your ultimates as much as you possibly can. A lot of aspects that we've kind of gone over here with forcing and lack of preparation and basically wasting abilities is patience, and I feel that it's an important aspect of it because when you're defending especially, doing nothing can honestly be the right thing to do, but there are a couple of times where that changes, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this is something which we call a win condition. One example, you only have 1 minute left, then the next ultimate you use will be your last, so don't stress about using it immediately. Try waiting for the right moment. Did the enemies win the last team fight? They probably have their ultimates. Or did they not engage you for over a minute? Then they probably don't have their ultimates. Try to think about what ultimates the enemy team has and how you can deal with them. Maybe you shouldn't use your Lucio ultimate as soon as the enemy Zarya ults you. Maybe you should just try to out-heal it and save it for when the Genji uses his ultimate afterwards. Or maybe you see that the only ultimates you have for the next fight are a Genji ultimate and a nano boost. Then you may want to save your Zarya bubble when Genji dashes in so that he doesn't die. Realize what play will lead you to winning and make sure that that play happens. Your soldier has his ultimate, focus D.Va so that she loses her mech and soldier can ult uninterrupted. Your Reinhardt has his ultimate, burst the enemy Reinhardt shield down as fast as possible or throw a flashbang over it as McCree so that your Reinhardt can win you the game using his ultimate. Don't try to win the game by yourself. Have a game plan for the last few minutes and realize when you need to focus on your teammates carrying the fight for you. So next, waiting is really important. You wait for the enemies to make a mistake. You wait for your teammates to regroup. You wait for the enemies and Yata to use his transcendence. You wait so much, but don't use it to check Reddit or Facebook. Use it to think about everything. Who are you going to focus with your Genji ultimate? Does your team have enough or too little healing? Do the enemies maybe have snipers, meaning that you should swap to a tank from McCree so that she can't one-shot you anymore? Where were the enemies positioned in the last round? What did they plus last round, and what can I play to deal with those predictable picks? Time not thinking or doing anything is time wasted.
Now I think the next aspect, I think we all go through, and it's tilting, and I like something that you said before with tilting is basically playing irrationally. And it's not, tilting isn't playing toxic, it's not shouting at your team or telling people to F off and stuff like that. In fact, it tends to be the other way around, especially for me when I tilt, I go dead silent. And that's obviously a big problem when you're trying to communicate as a team and you don't have that morale to be able to concentrate on making those tough plays. A main thing is to work out and to realise that why you're tilting and why that's a strong aspect in the game. For example, we were on a bit of a loss streak a couple of nights ago. The reason why we were tilting there wasn't necessarily that we were just losing skill rating. It had a lot to do with that we were losing games that we just shouldn't be losing. We weren't playing very well as a team, but us tilting more made it so we were losing more and more games that we maybe should have won because, again, that team morale had sort of broken apart and was going from there. Another thing you need to bear in mind there as well is that it's just a drop in the ocean. Just even a night of losses doesn't really make a gauge of your overall season or even your overall skill performance. Imagine being in season 14 in a couple of years' time. Will you remember that really shitty night of loss streaks that you had last week? There are plenty of reasons to get annoyed and upset in your games. Maybe there's somebody on the enemy team that's BMing a little, somebody on your team that just isn't pulling their weight or just is inexperienced. Maybe you don't think they're in the right sort of skill bracket, maybe they should be lower or higher on the enemy team, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because the only thing that you should be focusing on is your own in-game performance. Another sort of metaphor I can give is people say not to gamble when you're angry, when you're drunk, when you're sad, because there are a lot of things that you can't really gauge and you can't really decide when you're gambling. And to be fair, a little bit at least, ranked is exactly the same. There are certain aspects in that you cannot control, and you don't want to make your mood worse by being upset, being tired, being drunk. You don't want to sort of make it worse for yourself. But if you are sort of wanting to dedicate and to improve, then try and remain rational, break down your play, and understand what you could have done better, and just try and keep above the emotional aspect of it. Best advice that I've ever got across a lot of things: when emotion runs high, logic runs low.
So, one of the things that happens a lot with players when they get tilted is that they just keep repeating the same mistake over and over. If you died twice in a row to a Reinhardt charge, an Earth Shatter, a Zarya Beam, or Junkrat bombs, then you may want to get off the ground and get on high ground. Your soldier keeps dying behind your back when you play Ana. Maybe you need to stand further away and not play as aggressive, because you get the feeling that if you don't do anything, nobody does anything. Your Tracer ultimate got soaked by D.Va's defense matrix. Maybe next time you should try to use it after she lost her mech. You should never let tilt affect the rationality and the logic of your gameplay.
And the final point that we want to bring up, which I think is probably the most important, is not playing without any form of goal. Now, when we say goal, everybody wants to climb in ranked, right? It's one of those things that's my goal. I just want to be gold or platinum by the end of the season. And that can only get you so far. It's a desire and it's something to work towards, sure, but it's more how are you going to get there as opposed to getting there.
Yeah, it's important that you realize that these arbitrary goals, such as reaching a certain rank, they will become completely useless a couple seasons down the road. So it's important that your goals will actually change something about you that you're going to cherish in the future seasons. Potentially hitting, for example, in the last season, hitting Diamond might have been the dream that you had, but with Blizzard changing the rank system and you simply forgetting about past seasons as more and more seasons come, this goal from back then seems so unimportant to you now. Whereas if you really focus on a specific part of your gameplay, if you really focus on movement, positioning, predicting enemy ultimates, and you get really good at it, that is going to accompany you for the rest of your Overwatch career.
So there are pretty much a lot of reasons why you may keep losing games, but of course we've kind of gone over some things to bear in mind. We of course have a coach with us. How can you sort of look at your own gameplay and improve off of that?
So, when you look at your gameplay, it's important that you aren't trying to soak in everything at once. You should really focus on one specific thing. Do you want to improve your positioning, cooldown usage, tracking ultimates, strafing, or even target priority? Playing the game will test you in all those aspects, so improving feels like watching the grass grow. Finding out your main mistake and focusing on it until it becomes instinct is the fastest way to improve and to see very noticeable improvements in how you play.
And that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope that these sort of tips and tricks have helped you out. Again, it's very difficult to give advice to everybody. There's a big spectrum of players that watch us, but I do hope that this is a good start. I'd like to thank Iostux again for joining me on this video. Do let us know in the comments if you'd like him to join again. And also if you have any sort of scenarios or questions that you would like me to go over with a professional coach. But until next time, take care, and we'll see you then.